All right, a couple of things that you need to know from Unit 1. If I was in class, this is exactly what I would do with you all. If I put up these different histograms for you, could you identify what shape you think that each of these are? So pause the video and take a moment and guess or identify what the shape are for each of these. All right, from here, this one, hopefully that you said that this one is kind of symmetric. Symmetric. You could have also said it was unimodal as one thing. This one, it kind of tapers off over here to the left. This one would be skewed left. And this one right here has got two peaks. I would say that this one also is symmetric because I could fold it in half. And that would look fine right here. And, oh shoot, so sorry. This one was symmetric. And you could fold it in half right there, and it has two peaks, so we could say that it is bimodal. Okay, besides those ones, another question that I would have for you, and I hope you could answer, is what do we remember about the relationship between the mean and the median? When things are symmetric, what do we know about the mean and the median? And when things are skewed, what do we know what happens with the mean and median? Maybe pause this and think about it for just a brief moment. All right, when we have symmetric data, the mean and the median, the median is symbol M, and the mean symbol has two different ones. You could use mu of x or x bar, are the same, right? Versus, and so that would be same here. The mean mu of x or x bar would be equal to the median because it is symmetric. But when you have skewed left data or skewed right data, the one that is the mean gets pulled towards the skew. And so in this case, the mean would be less than the median because it would get pulled to the left. All right, so hopefully that makes sense. All right, another thing that we could talk about with these are what would you call, kind of like I already traced on these ones, what would you call the lines that follow the tops of this? This is kind of like more of a Unit 2 question. But when I follow the tops of those, what is that called? Those are called density curves. A density curve typically follows the tops to oversimplify histograms, especially if they had a ton of bars, right? If you had a histogram with lots of bars, unlike this one, it doesn't have very many. A lot of time we use density curves to help simplify what we're looking at. And again, density curves aren't always curvy. Okay, some things from Unit 1. You should remember which measurements are measurements of center, or tell us where the data is kind of tends to be, or generally speaking is located. See if you can pick out measures of center. There are 4 of them. See if you can find what they are. Measurements of center would be the, oh, I said there's 4. There's only 2. My bad. It's the mean and the median, right? They both start with M, and that tells you where the data on average tends to be. Generally speaking, where's the middle? What does the group of data look like? Versus measures of spread tell you how far out things are. There are 4 measures of spread. You should be able to identify them all. The standard deviation and the variance, the range and the IQI. There is only one measurement of center that is resistant to skew and outliers, and there's only one measurement of spread that is resistant to skew and outliers. See if you can pick out which measurement does not change regardless of having skew present or outliers present. All right, for the measures of center, we just discussed on the last slide that the mean gets pulled towards skew and outliers, where the median stays in the middle, stays in place, or doesn't change as much. Versus with the measurements of spread, the only one that also kind of stays in place when you have those really far outliers are the IQRs. because that is dealing with the location of Q1 and Q3. Okay, really quickly, you should also feel comfortable with defining each of these. What are they? And using the symbols that we now have for them. So I'm going to take a moment and pause and see if you can write the symbols or remember the symbols for each. All right, the symbols for mean are, you could use mu of x for population or x bar. For standard deviation, you can use sigma of x or s of x. For the range, there's not really one, neither was one for really IQR. For the median, it's a capital M. And for variance, it is just the standard deviation squared in either case. Also, you should be able to define what they are. The interquartile range is the range between Q3 minus Q1. You have to have that memorized. The mean is just an average. What does your data look like on average? Your standard deviation is how far away you are from the mean. How far from the mean on average. So some data values are very far away from the mean and some are not. The range is your max minus your minimum value, and your median is the middle number. And honestly, I don't really care about variance. The variance is just the squared standard deviation. Okay, other things that you would need to be able to feel good about for Unit 1 is if you were given a data set, be able to say a little bit about it. You should feel comfortable with box plots. Box plots will come up over and over again. So if you were looking at this data, you should be able to describe what you have going on. And in order to describe data, we said we have the rubric of stocks. You need to talk about the shape, the center, and the spread. And mention if you have any outliers. And within all of that, give some context. In this problem, there is no context, so we don't have to worry about that. But take a moment. Can you describe what the shape, the center, and the spread are? If I was describing this one, I would say that the shape seems to be skewed to the right. This half of the data seems more spread out than this half. So I would say skewed to the data is skewed right. I would also say over here, there is an outlier at 12. So there's an outlier at 12. I would also say that the center measurement, that the mean of this data still happens to be 3. Oh, that's not the mean, that's, well, my bad. It's the median, the middle number. The middle number still happens to be 3. And then in order to talk about spread, the only appropriate measure for spread, yes, you could find the range, but the only appropriate one is to do the IQR here in this case. And the IQR is Q3 minus Q1. So this minus that would give you 4. Okay? So if you were describing those, you would want to talk about shape, center, and spread, and outliers when you're describing something. Okay, so besides that, what are these numbers in blue called? They have a name, and I'm pretty sure a question on a test refers to them as this, and I just wanted to make sure that you're okay. Those 5 numbers are called the 5 number summary. It's just a way to refer to the maximum, the minimum, Q1, Q2, and Q3, where Q2 is the middle number, the median. Just gives you a summary of all the important numbers that you might want to know. Okay, another thing that we have, if you were looking at this, is what percent of the data is between 1 and 3. So again, if I was to look at this, a common question with box plots from 1 to 3. Pause and see if you can figure that out. Okay, so this section has 25% of the data. This section has 25% of the data. This section has 25% of the data. And this section over here has 25% of the data. Now the question is, what percent of the data are between 1 and 3? Well, that would be 50% of our data. Well, then why is this piece so much shorter than maybe this chunk? Again, the whole point of a box plot is to show you how spread out your data is in the sections. So on this side, we would see that the data is much more spread out over here than it is in these little pieces. Okay? And that is an important feature of box plots. You can see how spread out the data is and get those important measurements and find for something. Okay, moving along, and we're almost done with Unit 1. Another thing from Unit 1 was if you were given a data set, could you make a display? And could you describe it? And so making a display, I would say you should rely, you can do it by hand, but you can also use your calculator if you want. And hopefully you're feeling a little bit better about how to do things on your calculator. But if that was the data set that I would have, I would probably take my data and type it in here. So, this is not looking good, but it's fine. If I would do this, I would do stat, edit, and I would type in my information here. So I have 2, 4, 6, 1, 1, 4, 3, 12, 3, 1, 2, 1, 1, 5, 5, 9, oh gosh, 9, 3, 3, 6, 6. And so when I did this one, I would do stat, calc, and then 1 bar stats, and mine's all in L3. Again, that would just give me maybe some of the important information about it, but if I wanted to create a display, something that would be helpful is to click the make a plot. And for this one, I have all of my information in, I don't want a dot plot because I only have one thing. Maybe I make a, what the heck is that thing called? A box and whisker plot, and all of my information is in L3. That's where I typed it, and I forgot to actually click what I wanted. And so now when I click graph and I do zoom 9, make it show up, there would be my little plot of, it says how 20 people were asked how many movies they saw in the last month. This would be a plot of that. And so I do know how to create a display. Now you could make a dot plot, you could make a stem and leaf plot, you can do whatever you're comfortable with, but you do need to know how to make at least one display. Again, for this one, if I was going to describe, if you were asked to describe a set of data, you would need to use stocks to help you describe. Talk about the shape, the center, the spread, and if there are any outliers. And the reason that I like doing this is because I can see the shape, it's skewed right. I can see that there's an outlier. I know the center values is if you trace. I see that the median is 3. If I want to figure out the interquartile range, I can do that minus this one and figure out what the heck is going on. Anyways, that is something that you can do. And that's it for Unit 1 of tidbits that you should be able to know how to do. 1, do you know different shapes and how the mean and median relate? Do you know your vocabulary? And could you describe a data set / make one if you need to? And that's all I got.